Welcome everybody to Papa Spice's Hot Takes with Hans and Harry. We're coming back at you with another delightful episode here. We're recording on May the 4th, so happy Star Wars Day to everybody. Hopefully, when this drops, you will all have had a good Star Wars Day. Harry, what's going on with you, man? Anything new or exciting?
Well, I mean, we did get together this weekend to hang out, being vaxxed and all that, for my
Mm-hmm.
bachelor party. I think I've mentioned multiple times that I have a wife, but I just call her that. We're not married yet. But yeah, so that's what we did this weekend. So it was a fun, enjoyable weekend, and I found some time to check out Mortal Kombat before, and I'm excited to talk about video game movies because it's two passions that I have with video games and movies.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And yeah, we had quite the time at your bachelor party. Nothing too crazy, but just enough crazy. Hans, how about you, man? Anything good?
Yeah, I'm still recovering, but I'm glad that I got to see you guys over the weekend. Happy Star Wars Day to everyone. It's an exciting day for me. I think I've been celebrating it for as long as it actually existed. So, no, let's I'm ready to kind of jump into today's topic and talk about a bunch of hot messes.
Yes. Oh boy, we are in for that for sure. So, as you guys have surmised, the topic for today is video game movies. So there's a couple caveats with this. We're only doing live action American theatrical releases. So why do I put that stuff in there? Well, and they have to actually be adapted from video games, like specific titles. So that means movies like Pixels, the Adam Sandler movie from a couple years ago. That's not included because that's not based on any one game. Angry Birds, not in this because it's animated, although we do have one single animated feature at Hans's request, so I allowed that in. Also, American, there are a bunch of Japanese movies that have been made based on video game properties, but those are not included here. We're only talking American live action theatrical releases. Okay, so with that said, the way this is going to work, we're just going to go down alphabetically because there's not as many as I thought there would be in terms of video
Yeah.
game adaptations. So we'll go down, we'll read what year it was released, as well as the Rotten Tomatoes critic score. Spoiler alert, you're in for a lot of crap. And
A
then
lot of low scores.
if anybody's got anything they want to say or chime in on, then we'll do that. So let's start with the first one. We have Alone in the Dark, which was released in 2005, and that scored a whopping 1% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, it doesn't look like any of us have seen that, but does anybody have any thoughts on it?
I remember playing the game. I don't remember too much about the movie. The only thing like that stuck out with me, like with the score, is this is pretty much the exact opposite of Citizen Kane. Um, so it now has it's a 1%. Just like that's. I want to actually find the actual positive review that someone
Mhm.
gave that. But other than that, this just seems like a generic like like a horror not comedy horror video game movie that like kind of came and went. Like in terms of box office, I mean, we were all working. I like at a cinema at the time, and it was kind of I don't remember that ever making like a splash. So I think that was a here and there. So
Yeah, I mean, I vaguely remember the poster. I remember that Christian Slater was in it, and that was about it. I didn't bother
Yeah.
seeing it because I've never played the video game, so I didn't really have any interest.
yeah,
Um, Harry, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was 17 when this movie came out, so it kind of I remember it like being probably on as a trailer for like many movies that I saw as a
Mm.
17-year-old. But yeah, never played the game, never saw the movie. But yeah, it jumped out to me as like, oh yeah, that was like a thing, and then that's pretty much it. So off to a rocking start with these garbage movies. So
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So next we have Assassin's Creed, which was released in 2016. Michael Fassbender starring. Rotten Tomatoes, 18% critical rating. Hans, you were the only one of us to see this. What are your
it
thoughts?
it deserved like at least that should have been ranked lower than Alone in the Dark.
Oh my
Now
goodness.
it's one of those movies that has such a like Fassbender's such a great actor, and like I kind of saw where they were going. But I'm a huge fan of the Assassin's Creed series. Like I think I've played all except like one or two, and there's such a like an amazing like kind of story of like anywhere they can go with it. But I think if I remember, like I think I fell asleep during it like halfway through, and I had to go back and watch it. But I think like it doesn't. I think it doesn't even have any characters from the game for the most part, and it doesn't really take place in like that setting that the games take place in. It's more modern day, which honestly, like of all the Assassin's Creed games I played, that's like the most least interesting part of it is when you're like not in what I guess the machine. I forget the name of the machine that makes you kind of go back and like basically relive as your ancestors. It really spent a lot of stuff in the real world, which I wasn't a fan of. Like I guess I kind of saw where they were going, but if don't call it Assassin's Creed, like call it something else. It wasn't good.
So not a great adaptation of the game.
No, not at all. Yeah, I felt like I was playing like it was cool that they maybe put some of it in, and I'm like, all right, like this. It starts off pretty solid, and then it kind of like 5-10 minutes in, you're like, this isn't it. Like this. I would never consider this part of like any kind of Assassin's Creed like lore, or even I wouldn't even want to include it with the name. Like it's bad.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Moving on, we have Blood Rain from 2006, which scored a whopping 4% Rotten Tomatoes. So this starred Christina Loken of Terminator 3 fame and Ben Kingsley. What? Doesn't look like any of us saw this. Anybody have any reminiscence about the movie or the video game?
No. I think I think Blood Rain was like at one point like I downloaded it for free, but I never played it. But other than that, I don't know anything. Like good for Ben Kingsley, like probably trying to buy another house or something. Like all these like Academy Award winning actors always like do these like dumb horrible roles. Like even like Anthony Hopkins was in a Transformers movie. He wasn't good in it, and he just won an award. So good for him. He got paid and bought another house.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, all I remember about Blood Rain is it's about a vampire lady. I've never played the game. Don't recall the movie really. So
I think I'll real quick about Blood Rain. I think I'll use this time to touch on Assassin's Creed. Agreed with Chris. Love the games. Never saw the movie. And Blood Rain didn't play the games and never saw the movie. So we're off to another great start here with this one.
Yeah, pretty wild. Okay, so moving on, we have DOA, Dead or Alive, which came out in 2006. Comparatively speaking to the rest of this list, it scored pretty high with a 33% Rotten Tomato score. And this starred Jamie Presley and Devin Aoki. Again, another one none of us have seen. Anybody ever play the games?
Is this with the I don't even know if this is the right game or not. Is this with the girls that are playing volleyball or something? It's like there's like some kind of like on the cover they're playing volleyball. It's Dead or Alive. Yeah. Never saw the movie and I never played the game. I don't know. Is that the movie?
It's well, so it is a fighting game, but then it branched off into like volleyball in there. And it had lots of ladies in it, which I guess they used to market. So yeah, I mean that's DOA, but apparently so far of the list, it's the highest scoring movie. So there must have been something redeemable.
Go ahead.
I
was just gonna say, like there was this time in like the early 2000s, for some of our younger audience members who might be younger than us for it, but there was this boom of just these movies where it was like they tried to like just pump these like video game properties out. Right before even the Marvel boom. But this one I never played the games, but as an 18-year-old kid, I remember being interested in it, but never played it and never saw the movie for it. So, woo.
And these and just on that note, these are all movies that like, I look back now when I kind of like if I see like a Facebook memory or something, I'm like say like if I'll like go see a movie and I'll like kind of comment on it like in my like old school status. I'll say like, wow, that movie was like incredible, blah, blah, blah. And then like, I look back and realize like what, like my taste in movies, like if I thought that was incredible was like god awful. And I think it's just like one of those things, like I think like Harry's right. They pumped out these movies like crazy. And I think when you're watching it, you're like, man, that like I mean, there's a couple movies on here I remember seeing in the theater. I'm like, "Phew, that was amazing!" And then like I think even on a second viewing, a couple years later, or just like the next day, you think about it and you're like, "No, like this is not good." Like this, was I under the influence or something, or am I just like just for some reason thought it was just like I questioned my taste. I'm like, oh my god, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. There will be movies where I look back and it's like, okay, maybe maybe that movie was a little bit in poor taste, and I probably have evolved beyond that. But I mean, that's what we do. We go and we start watching Oscar nominated films, and next thing you know, we're looking back and discussed at a video game list, video game adaptation list. All right. So next up, we have Dead Trigger from 2019. This actually didn't have any critical scores from Rotten Tomatoes. The only bit of info I had on this was Dolph Lundgren starred in it. I don't recall the video game Dead Trigger. I definitely never heard of the movie. Were you guys aware of this at all?
No.
Now this was like one of the few movies that I had to like Google to like be like, what is this? So yeah, absolutely a big goose egg for me as well on that.
When you can't even get critics to comment on it and put it on a Rotten Tomatoes thing, then like something's wrong with it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, moving on, we have Doom from 2005, which had an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, a few of us have seen this, myself included. Doom starred The Rock, and that's about all it had going for it. This was before The Rock really started hitting it big in movies. I mean, he was the lead in this, but it was still earlier on in his career. And man, this just, I love the Doom games, although I haven't played any of the recent ones. But the movie just was not good for me. It was a one and done for me. I never even bothered revisiting it. Hans, what do you think about Doom?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other part I remember is Carl Urban's in it too, and that's pretty much it. I know they did the first person kind of view, and when I saw it, it made me sick. It was like very like quick and shaky camera and on. I wasn't into it. Same thing. I love the Doom games. Like if you haven't played it and you're listening, the new Doom Eternal is fantastic. But other than that, I would never watch this again. I remember seeing it in the theaters and I said, this is probably like once is enough.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, we have Double Dragon from 1994, scored a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I was the only one that saw this. So first of all, let me say, what? Hans, go ahead.
I vaguely remember seeing this at like growing up. I think this was one of those movies that I must have seen like over and over for some reason. Like I think one of my brothers like had the cassette or something for it. And I think like I watched this more than I like should have. But that was like right between like the ages of like 8 and 10. But I do remember a Double Dragon movie, but I couldn't tell you the first thing about it.
Okay. So Robert Patrick was the star of the film. He was the villain, and boy, he had a drastically different look than he had in Terminator 2 with bleach blonde hair and a goatee and everything. Yeah, like I said, 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. It wasn't good. I would throw this in. I would say it's in the vein of the Street Fighter adaptation, the first one, which we'll talk more about later.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it was super cheese. I mean, what else is there to say? I really enjoyed the Double Dragon games, but this didn't have the feel of that. It's kind of like Super Mario Brothers and Street Fighter in that they throw in a bunch of stuff to reference, but ultimately it doesn't feel like the IP. It doesn't feel like that original property. So I don't know, kind of disappointing for such a beloved franchise, but here we are.
Greg, do you think it deserved the 13%?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Again, I've only seen this one maybe twice, and it was in the 90s, close to the release.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's a reason I haven't revisited it. Okay, moving on, we have Far Cry from 2008, So this is another one that didn't have any critical reviews from Rotten Tomatoes. Um, it starred Till Schweiger, and that's
Whoever
about
that
all
is.
yeah, that's about all I know. I was surprised to find out that Far Cry had a movie made of it because I had no idea. I've never played any of the games, but I understand they're pretty popular franchise. Do you
Yeah.
guys have any thoughts on the game, the movie, or the game franchise?
I like the game franchise. I played, I think, like 3, 4, and I want to play the 5th one. But other than that, like, I didn't even know that they even had this movie. Like that actor you just mentioned, I have no idea who that is.
Hmm.
I've never heard of them. Other than that, I mean, they're fun games, but I would never think that there was actually a movie that was made out like about this.
Hare, have you played any of the Far Cry's?
Yeah, I was gonna say this one's a miss for me as well. I've never been involved in the Far Cry games, and I feel like it's similar to Resident Evil, where it's like we're up to like 8 or 9 now, and it's like I have never played one. So when do I jump in? How do I jump in? What have I missed? Same with Doom. I never played Doom either. So as much as I love video games and movies, I'm really blowing it right now with not seeing any of these movies and playing any of these games. So please don't take my nerd card away. I would love to keep it.
Yeah,
We got some coming up for you, bud.
yeah, for sure. And just so you guys are aware of who Till Schweiger is, so he was Sergeant Hugo Stiglitz in Inglorious Bastards.
Oh, okay.
And he's been in some other stuff like Atomic Blonde, Muppets Most Wanted,
Right.
things of that nature.
Nice.
But yeah, not necessarily a household name.
Well, Hugo Stiglitz, I think he was. Bam.
Yeah. Okay, so up next we have Final Fantasy VII Advent Children from 2005. This is our one animated movie at the request of Hands. This one scored a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Ooh.
And Hands, me and you have seen this. Before we dive into that, Hera, have you ever played Final Fantasy VII?
So again, please don't take my nerd card away. I have never
Uh-oh.
played a Final Fantasy game. So yeah, I think it started on PlayStation, right? Like I'm 99%
No,
sure.
NES.
Well, no, not
NES.
the series,
Okay.
but Final
All right.
Fantasy VII did.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I think I was probably like, I think this is where like just our age range showed just even those couple years of difference where like it just missed me jumping into 7 and I didn't play any of the games before it. And again, another one where like you hear the numbers of it and it's intimidating and you're like, where do I start? You know, and you know, I usually get the reviews from you guys on which one to play, but long way of saying, yeah, I've never played this. So I might be handing in my nerd card at the end of this. So I apologize, everyone.
Okay, Hands, thoughts on the game and then the movie.
No, and Final Fantasy VII is probably my favorite game of all time, at least in top 3. If it isn't like Final Fantasy, the 2 of them on Super Nintendo, like 2 and 3 are probably like close behind. Like I'm a huge fan of the Final Fantasy series, and I think this 33% is a trash take. Now I think this movie, if we were to rank like our video game movies, one of the like I would probably put this like top 2. Like I actually love it. Like this movie was like very heavily like anticipated when they made it, and that's what I just like whenever I think video game movies, and I know we kind of wanted to keep live action. Like I love it. Like the action in it's so good. Like it takes place right after the game, so it's not necessarily like a straight adaptation from the game, so it's more of a sequel. But I mean, now we have the remake of Final Fantasy VII, which is kind of going in like kind of changing the story of the original game. But other than that, like I think like the voices like kind of just the cast like make it seem like how I think the characters would actually sound in the game. Like at the time, I mean, this was like I forget what, like 10, 15 years ago this was released, and no, I thought it was great. Like I didn't want to spend too much time on it because I know it's not necessarily live action, but I only want to include it because if we were talking video game movies, this was like a struggle between my number 1 and number 2.
Wow. So for me, Final Fantasy VII, absolutely love the game. I'd put it in my top 10 for sure, maybe top 5 of all time. Just a wonderful RPG, and the new game, the Final Fantasy VII remake, has done it justice and is also amazing. So highly recommend going and checking that out if you want. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. So the one knock that I'll have on this, and maybe that's what kept it at 33% instead of going higher, is that from what I remember, the plot was a little confusing for me. It wasn't just kind of like a linear story, like a linear sequel from the second one, from what I remember. It has been a while since I've seen it. The animation was gorgeous. The fight scenes and the action were incredible. So it really was good in that regard, especially in carrying the torch from as a continuation of Final Fantasy VII. But yeah, that the plot was just kind of mystifying a little bit to me. But overall, yeah, really, really enjoyed it and recommend checking it out. I'm assuming it's on Blu-ray, right? It's got to be.
Oh yeah, I think I have it on Blu-ray. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, should be available if you guys want to check it out. All right, moving on, we have Hitman from 2007, which scored a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it starred Timothy Oliphant and Dougray Scott. Now, I haven't played any of the Hitman games, nor have I seen the Hitman movies. So what do you guys think about this?
I'll let you take this one.
Oh, thanks.
You've been a little quiet.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of these, sadly, and it's kind of one of those things that you go through and you're just like, hey, probably should have seen at least some of them, but with the scores that they have, probably just should have played them. Hitman for me is one of my, I guess, favorite games from like the PS2 era, because that's when the majority of them came out. They were just kind of banging those out like yearly or every other year. With it. And it was basically, a stealth game where you're a hitman and you have to go through and, try to find sometimes even creative ways to, do a hit. The movies treated, I would say, these movies a little bit more like what happens in the games if you accidentally are getting caught while you're doing the hit. So basically it's just guns blazing, trying to get out Grand Theft Auto style, trying to complete the mission, but you don't get any, good points or good score for that, for not completing it that way. And I feel like the two movies, Hitman and Hitman Agent 47, both didn't do service to them as a game. Chris, I don't know what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played any of the newer Hitmen, but I like I like the original ones. I think Hitman 2 is like one of my favorite games I've had like on that generation for the con. I think it was like I had it on 360, and or the first Xbox, one of them. It was, I mean, they're good games, and it was one of the games I first remember, like you had said, where you kind of have your own way of doing things, where it kind of gives you a little more control, and it's not as linear as other similar games like that are. But with that being said, the only thing I really remember at the first Hitman movie is that Timothy Oliphant's in it. He's Hitman. He's not a good Hitman. He doesn't even look like a good Hitman. And there was a fight on a train. I think that's it. And I don't even know if that's completely accurate, but that's what I remember. Other than that, I kind of remember it being like just like a sloppy kind of like telling of the game. So.
Yeah, they definitely treated it more as like an action, type of I don't even know what, like almost like a Jason Bourne-esque type, real poor man's Jason Bourne, where it's like he's kind of, avoiding all these people and doing these incredible things. But yeah, it wasn't very good at all for 2007's Hitman.
Okay. So then we have the sequel, Hitman Agent 47, which you mentioned, Hare. That came out in 2014, so a 7-year gap for a sequel. And the big star was Rupert Friend. Scored 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. Lay it on us, Hare. What'd you think about the sequel?
Yeah, I mean, Rupert Friend, he's probably best known for Homeland. If anyone's ever seen that show, I remember that's where I first saw him in for that. He was in some of the later seasons, but yeah, I would say this one's definitely worse. I don't know. I wouldn't exactly call it a sequel as much as, I think it did, if I remember correctly, I think this one did a little bit more justice to like the Hitman character, because, to be fair with the games, there isn't really that much development of the Hitman character other than his relationship with the secret organization that he works for. So it is kind of, one of these things where, a lot is hidden and you have to play through the game to kind of find out for it. But the best parts about the game for me are, trying to complete a mission 100% without getting caught, stealth, alerting anyone, and stuff like that. So it's really hard to do that as a movie. I almost feel like this, and this will probably be a theme I'll carry throughout most of it. It'd probably be better as a TV series, like almost kind of like an HBO or something like eight run series of like, this is the hit he does this week, or this is where he's traveling this week, which I think would do a lot better for a Hitman adaptation, because I think the movies have just leaned far too much into, hey, your hit's gone wrong, this is what's happening. So, But yeah, I would say Hitman, the first one, probably just slightly above, but this one I think did a better job with the Hitman character.
Okay. Moving on, we have House of the Dead from 2003, based on the hit Shoot 'em Up. It scored a 3% on Rotten Tomatoes. I was the only one that saw this. So a couple little factoids, I guess. This was directed by legendary crap director Hugh Boll.
Man.
Yeah, that's strike one going against it. And the only names I could really find in there that I recognized that starred in it were Clint Howard and Erica Durance, who was on Smallville. I only saw this once. I saw it when it was released in theaters. And I mean, I remember thinking it was not good. But I also remember thinking, let me think here just to make sure the timeline is right. 2003. Yeah, I liked this more than I liked Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil. So spoiler alert for that. We'll touch more on the RE films later on, but I thought as a zombie movie goes, it was okay. I don't think from what I remember, it followed the plot of the video games where, you have the two special agents, kind of going in and taking all these zombies down. Other than that, I don't really have a ton to say about it. I wouldn't go out of your way to check it out, but if it pops on cable or whatever, sure, by all means, give it a watch and, let you Bowl entertain you for a couple minutes. Do you guys have any thoughts on the movie? I know you haven't seen it or the game series.
Is that the game where it's like a rail shooter where it takes you room to room? Yeah, I think I played that game in the arcade. That's all I know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, let's move on to the next one because I got nothing. I got nothing for this one.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so maybe the longest title or second longest title on our list, we have In the Name of the King, a Dungeon Siege Tale from 2008. So this one had Jason Statham and Ron Perlman in it, which is pretty interesting. I don't recall the game that it's based on. I don't know if that was the name of the game or a Dungeon Siege was the name of the game. I don't know. I don't really know anything about this. But Hans, you saw it.
I did.
Why don't you give us your take?
Another U-Ball classic. So I think the only reason I watched this movie is because I was on like a Jason Statham high. Like that was like kind of like when he was really like, I don't want to say he was peaking at that time because like Transporter came out like a little before that. But other than that, like it just his character's name's Farmer. He's trying to rescue his wife and son or wife and daughter, and he like meets Lily Sobieski and Ray Liotta's the king, and Ron Perlman's in there somewhere. It's exactly like it. I remember watching it and just being like again, I don't know what game it was based on, but it is a horrible movie, and that's it's so bad. And I don't know what company keeps giving U-Ball money. I really don't, because like I think we still have like a couple other movies that we have to touch on that he did on this list, and they're just all dumpster fires. And there's a reason this guy hasn't made a movie in like I don't even know how long. But like I actually went to like some video game convention once, and he was a speaker, and idiot me went and like spent some time in there. Me and like I think like 6 other people were in the room. And And I was thinking like that he'd be one of the. Like, he's such an interesting character that like I said, like people keep giving him money to make these movies, and they don't learn their lesson. And this movie, it's just another like just it's a dumpster fire. Like I don't even remember like one redeeming detail of it. Like I think like the cast is okay, other than like I'm not a Ray Liotta fan, but I think it's just like I think it like he's not convincing as a king. Jason Statham isn't convincing as like a farmer. Like you see that guy and you're like so, like he knows like some kind of martial arts. Like
Wait, so Farmer was his name and occupation?
yes, he was a farmer named Farmer.
Keep it simple.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
I don't know if that
Yeah,
was
sure.
yeah, I don't know if that was his name, but that's what everyone called him. So it's kind of like in Gladiator when they
Okay.
kept calling him Spaniard, but I
I
don't even
gotcha.
think. But at least he had a first name. Like I don't think
Right.
Farmer had a first name. I think they just called him Farmer. That's it.
Wow. So was this like a just your generic fantasy type movie?
I don't even wouldn't even call it fantasy. It'd be a fantasy to wish this movie never existed. Like it's just yeah, it's typical like medieval type like that kind of deal. But like I said, it's just I usually like those movies, and I'll try and find something like redeeming about them. Like I don't know if you guys like. Here's a perfect example, and it's not a video game movie, but if you ever saw the 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas,
Mm.
have you ever seen any of you?
Yeah.
Ever
I'm
seen that?
familiar with it, but I haven't seen it.
That's not a good movie, but at the same time, it's like the same kind of like Viking, like medieval type. It's not a good movie, but has redeeming qualities. This movie like just has nothing, like nothing going for it. Like, and what did you say it was like a 3%?
Yes.
Oh
No,
God,
4%.
4%. I'm sorry. Oh God, way yeah.
Gotta
Oh,
give it that
God.
one.
Like I need to find out who the hell ranked these movies or like we're critics on these because it's just bad. That's it. I'm done.
Okay. End rant.
Yeah.
And ran on a Dungeon Siege tale.
Oh, Burt Reynolds is in it too. That's
Is he
like,
really?
Yeah, he just shows up.
Wow.
Sorry, I jumped on IMDb to look at other names on it, and I'm like, yeah, like it just has names like that pop up in it, and you're like, all right,
There's your 6 degrees of separation trivia for the day.
I know, man.
Uh,
Lots of houses being bought when that movie came out.
Or maybe not, because I don't think it did well at the box
Yeah.
office. All right. So next up, we have Lara Croft Tomb Raider from 2001. And that had a 20% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Looks like each of us have seen it. Starred Angelina Jolie and John Voight. I'll be honest, love the Tomb Raider games. I only played 1 through 3, the original ones, and then the remake on PS4. I think it was PS3 or PS4. But as far as staying true to the original ones, it pretty much did. I thought Angelina Jolie had the look of Lara Croft from the games. I don't remember a ton about the plot, but I remember being entertained by it. What do you guys think about the both the series and the movie?
Go ahead, Hans.
I'm a big fan of the games. I didn't play the most recent one that came out,
Mhm.
but like I think it's Shadow of the Tomb Raider. But all the other ones I played through. I loved what they like kind of remade it, and like kind of rebooted the series.
Mhm.
Like you, I don't remember too much about the plot, but I remember like Angelina Jolie. She really had a really good look to Lara Croft, and like at that time, like she was like 26 years old. So she was like kind of fairly young of like what like kind of age Lara Croft would be. But I thought she had it like in both movies. Now I don't remember the second one. Like I remember seeing it just
Mhm.
like being off of like that's another one where I think there was such a high off the first one where at that time that was one of the first video game movies that was being made that was actually like kind of good. And yeah, I mean I unfortunately can't tell you much about like the plot. I remember liking it. I never had anything bad to say about them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for the time, this was considered one of the good ones in terms of video game adaptations, right?
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you, like in the annals of time itself, it doesn't really, live up to the hype. Harry, what do you got on Tomb Raider?
Yeah, I mean, as far as Tomb Raider, the video game, it holds a real special place for me. I think when I first got my PlayStation, we got one of those demo discs with Tomb Raider on it. And
Nice.
I
I
remember
know exactly what you're
playing.
talking about. Yep.
Yeah, there was a bunch of games on. I remember playing that constantly, and probably until like the disc broke. And Yeah, another special reason is me and my mom used to play Tomb Raider a lot. So my mom would basically do a lot of the clues and puzzles during the night when she would come home from work, and I would do all the action stuff. So we would each save on the memory card and then just take over for the other, and then talk about it the next day. So I'm pretty sure I've played almost every single Tomb Raider. The first couple, I think, like Greg was saying, were really, really kind of good for their time. We're great for action and for puzzles, is kind of keeping you guessing a little bit. Then they kind of hit a middle ground in the PlayStation 2, kind of next gen PlayStation 3 era where they kind of were a little sloppy. And then the most recent ones really kind of go kind of an uncharted route as far as trying to have big action set pieces and stuff like that. The movie, I don't know that. It's a shame I didn't look up the box office numbers before this, like I should have. But I feel like these two Tomb Raider movies, this one and the next one we'll talk about, Cradle of Life, were pretty successful, which I think helped kind of spawn over those next couple of years, some more, people trying to vie for video game properties to try and do the movies. But I thought there was definitely a version of Angelina Jolie's Tomb Raider where it was a little over sexualized with it, because I mean that's what a lot of people would do with the character, especially in the games. And I mean, I will say, I think in like one of the first Tomb Raiders, I think all she did was grunt for the most part, unless there was like some over like story, thing for that. So it wasn't like there was a lot of character development there. But those movies, that one and the Cradle of Life, I think for me were just the classic growing up. It's on TBS, it's on TNT, it's on like cable, like it's playing, at 7 o'clock, and you're flipping channels and, oh, here's Tomb Raider, let me check out a little bit of it. But yeah, the games hold more of a special place for me than I would say the movies do for it. But yeah, I mean, 20% probably sounds about right. I'm forgetful. I mean, like Chris was saying, I don't even remember. I know John Voight was in it as her father, and I know there was probably some bad guys that she had to hunt down, but I don't think it got that balance similar to Hitman, where I think it ends up being more of an action than more of just kind of developing the story a little bit with it.
Right. And just I just looked up some info in terms of money it made. Its budget was 115 million, made 274 million, almost 275 million worldwide. So almost, well, yeah, I mean it did more than double its budget. So yeah, it was definitely a big hit.
I mean, I definitely think that's why I got the sequel too, and I'm sure the numbers went a little down for that, which probably created the let's wait another 10 years or 15 years until we make another one.
Right.
When you guys were playing the second one, did you guys ever lock the butler in the refrigerator when you can run through the house?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
No.
I did that.
He'd follow you around with like water and iced tea or something.
Yeah,
and he got really annoyed
at the Croft estate. Yeah,
so you got to go in the kitchen and lock him in the freezer so he doesn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't punish him for being a dutiful servant.
He was doing his job.
Exactly. All right, so moving on, we have the sequel, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life, and that came out in 2003, so only 2 years after the first one. They pretty much had to greenlight the sequel right away and get on it. It scored a 24%, so 4% higher than the first movie. Looks like all three of us have seen this. Starred Angelina Jolie again, and also Gerard Butler. I'll be honest, there's a blank spot in my memory for this. I know I saw it, but I just don't remember much about it. Even though it does pop up on cable from time to time, I don't really ever check it out. Do you guys remember anything at all about the movie?
No, but that's amazing. Gerard Butler's in it. Like, I'll go back and watch it because, like, at that time, like, I had no idea who he was. Like, he wasn't even like kind of the big name yet.
Yeah.
So, like, to find out like he was in it, like, the same thing. I remember seeing it, but I couldn't tell you one thing about it
or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say this is where the situation, like, similar, I guess, sometimes with like Fast and Furious movies, where it's like, if you had told me the plot of the first one, and then actually told me it was the second one, I'd probably been like, oh, I would have had no idea. So yeah, this one, I know it had some more stars, and if you probably look at the cast for it compared to the first one, it probably had a little bit better of a cast, with that extra money, probably from what it made on the first one. But yeah, definitely not my favorite Tomb Raider. The most recent iteration is, which we'll touch on later. But yeah, just forgettable. Put it on cable. An action movie that's just kind of on.
Okay. Moving on, we have Max Payne, released in 2008, starring Mark Wahlberg and Mila Kunis. This scored 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. I did not see the movie. I did play the first game. I think there were sequels, but the first game was okay. I think this was this the movie that, or the game that invented bullet time?
Yeah,
it was like, if it wasn't the movie that invented it, it was like the very first to like really like be like a feature
game wise, because I mean the first movie was The Matrix, but
right.
But yeah, so okay, so that's what I thought. I couldn't remember. I remembered it being like a big innovation in the game, but the main character isn't exactly super likable. I mean, he's isn't he like a pill-addled cop or something like that?
Yeah, he's your basic detective, addict, drunk, who's his wife got murdered or whatever it was for it.
All right, so how'd they do with the adaptation?
Not good. I don't. Excuse me.
So resigned.
I don't even like. I people like kind of like gasp when I say this. Like, the biggest part of that is like Mark Wahlberg is not a good actor. Like, I don't think he's like. I think he was good in Boogie Nights, but I don't think I've ever seen him in a good movie other than that.
What about The Fighter?
All right, I'll give you that. I forgot that existed. That was a good movie.
Okay.
But it's just like I don't think he fits. Like, if I was casting like Max Payne today, like now it's like we're at the point, like I'm at the point in my life where I'm like seeing all these like things where I'm like, who would I cast? Like, I know much more actors, many more like who would I put in this situation? And Mark Wahlberg is the last person I would have casted as Max Payne. Mila Kunis, good on her. I like her. She's at the time she was coming up and kind of trying to make a name for herself outside of that 70s show. Other than that, like Mark Wahlberg is terrible. I don't remember the first thing about the story. I remember there were like some cool special effects. I don't. It was, the games are good, but the movie was absolutely terrible.
I remember the way Max Payne looked in the video games, and just based on looks alone, and probably get a better performance out of him. But Clive Owen, I think, would fit the bill.
That's not a bad shot, actually.
That's perfect. Like that would be perfect. Not Mark Wahlberg. He's like not even on like my top like 150. Like I'd probably put like Brendan Fraser somewhere. Like, and not like knocking on him. Like, he looks more like Max Payne than Mark Wahlberg does.
Right.
So Harry, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Max Payne for me was, I think, one of the first kind of PlayStation 2 games I played where it was like, I probably shouldn't be playing this. But the bullet time was definitely a real innovation. You could do crazy kind of jumps while you were shooting. Loved the game. I mean, as dark as it is, it was always fun to try to find yourself pinned in a corner and having to use a lot of bullet time to try and get out of it, to try and get away. Part of the problem with this movie is I do remember this movie being in 3D, if I'm not mistaken. But it was kind of like filmed very dark. They kind of went to try to copy, I think, not the action version of the game, but it went to the story mode of the game and kind of keeping things really dark. The other problem with this movie is that it was rated PG-13. And if you played Max Payne or are familiar with the game, it's not a PG-13 type game. It's definitely a rated R. Again, this would, I think, work great as a, TV series where they probably had more time to kind of tell the story with it. But yeah, love the game. Played some of the later, Max Payne 2. I think Max Payne 3 was one that like totally kind of changed the way the game was. But I remember that being pretty cool. But yeah, pretty forgettable movie, to be honest. 2008. If I had to guess, since it came out in 2008, there's a chance me and Chris saw it together, possibly, but don't even remember if that even happened. So
that's fair.
Yeah, sadly, another better game and a terrible movie.
Okay. Moving on, we have Monster Hunter, released last year in 2020. Scored a 47% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
we're climbing.
This is the highest.
We're climbing.
That's right, baby. Upwards and onwards. This is the highest rated movie so far. Starred Mia Jovovich, Tony Jaa, and Ron Perlman, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who seems to be another video game, like he's
He's the go-to.
perennially directing video game movies.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Paul Thomas Anderson.
I've done that. I've mistakenly done that. Where like I think like Paul Thomas Anderson we're talking about like I think it was There Will Be Blood, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like, is this the same guy that did like Resident Evil?
Psych.
Like,
Nope.
wow. He
Big
found his
nope.
niche. Yeah.
So I just recently got into the Monster Hunter franchise with Monster Hunter World on PS4, and I thought that was a terrific game. Was a lot of fun, and made me want to look at further iterations and sequels in the game world. But from what I played in Monster Hunter World, the story looks like it skews a little bit in the movie, because it doesn't really have anything to do with, I guess, the modern day world or the world that we live in, where from what I've seen in the trailers, it looks like soldiers from our world cross dimensions and go into the Monster Hunter world or whatever. So that kind of made me stay away and made me a little bit hesitant. But I mean, it looks like it did okay for itself. Have you guys played any of the Monster Hunter games, or did you want to see the movie?
No, I the Monster Hunter games, like I think that was one of the games I was waiting for to like drop to get that sale price.
Mm-hmm.
And like I wasn't confident enough like paying like full price. So I was gonna wait till it like came down. But I know it like the PlayStation was it PlayStation Plus now. I think it's one of like the free games that you can download. So I was gonna go back and revisit it. But other than that, like the only redeeming quality, like just looking at the cast, is Tony Jaa, who is like just a monster in himself in terms of martial arts. Yeah. So I think that's kind of like a good, like that would attract me to watch it. And Mila Jovovich, I mean, she's in one of my favorite science fiction movies with The Fifth Element. Other than that, like we'll talk about Resident Evil, but nothing really drove me to want to go see this. I think I might want to try the game out, and then if this happens to be like free and streaming somewhere, I'll check it out. But I don't think this came out last year. Was it last year?
Yeah, last year. It was in December, I believe.
Okay, so and it was released in theaters.
Yes.
So I wouldn't pay to see it. I'd have to wait until like that. That's definitely that kind of movie. It's like I have to be in the right mood to like not really care and like at home on my couch.
Hare, play Monster Hunter or any desire to see it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say never played. I think it might be free on like the PlayStation Plus, or maybe I'm confusing that with another game.
Like with the 30 games or something that are free.
Right.
I think it's on there. Yeah.
So it's always been one that I want to get into, and the movie seemed pretty cool. If they ever made something like Horizon Zero Dawn into a movie, that would be something where I think they could look at that and maybe see. Again, I haven't seen it, so hopefully the CGI is cool. But kind of in the element of that of having big monsters. So yeah, it sounds like a cool premise. Would like to check it out.
Okay. Next up, we have one of my personal faves, Mortal Kombat. Yeah, get that EDM music, dude. So this is the original from 1995, a 44% on Rotten Tomatoes, and starring Christopher Lambert, Robin Chow, Lyndon Ashby, also directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. So, man, look, this is one of those movies where I'm not going to argue that it's not cheesy, because it is. It's definitely got some cheese. But I love this movie so much, and it stay 100% true to the characters and the story and everything. Not 100%, but it's mostly there. I'd say the biggest divergence they took was with Raiden, having a Frenchman play a Japanese god, and someone who in the games was very stoic, but in the movie is kind of glib and comedic in a sense. Or he has more like a dry sense of humor. It was definitely a weird thing to see, but I loved what they did with it. Man, I love this movie so much, and I will watch it probably like once a year. It's just it's awesome for me. I can't say enough good stuff about OGMK. Harry, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, Mortal Kombat's never really been a game series that I've gotten into. I'm not really a huge fighting game style type of player, probably because I'm not good at it, and maybe that's why. But I remember being 11 years old when this movie came out, and I guess I must have been about maybe 12, because I guess, waiting for it to come out on VHS back in the day. But yeah, it came out on VHS, and we had a sleepover at my friend Bernie's house. And it was the weekend at Bernie's. Just kidding. It was just a night. And we literally had this movie on, and I think we replayed the beginning of it like 100 times, where just the intro comes in and the music's blaring. But yeah, I watched this movie a lot. Have I revisited it a lot since then? No. I think similar to Greg, it's like I like to keep the nostalgia I have for it is strong. And I want to keep those memories and not with my, film mind, go back to it and critique it. So I'll keep those memories that I have of it. So,
okay, fair enough. Hans, what about you?
I think like looking back and I watched the new Mortal Kombat within the past week, and I went back to kind of just watch some clips of like scenes that I remember from the original, and I'm going to call him Lambert because I know it's Lambert, but I think I've been calling him that for like 35 years. So like, that's a great, like, I didn't even think about it at the point where it's just like, yeah, you have like a Frenchman playing like a Japanese god. And I know why they casted him, because I think it's like at the time he was coming off of Highlander. It was like 8 or 9 years after Highlander. And he was like a big kind of name, like an action name. So it's like everyone else in that movie other than, God, I don't even know. I didn't even think like Robin Shell was like kind of big, like other than like Beverly Hills Ninja, and like I don't even remember anything else he was in. I thought the action was pretty cool in it. I like in terms of Mortal Kombat's such a tough series because there's so many characters to kind of give justice to. I liked it. I liked the final fight between Liu Kang and Shao Tsung. It's like actually like really like how like the whole thing plays out. I think it's really cool. It's nostalgic. It's not my favorite video game movie. But it's I definitely probably put like top 5, top 10. But other than that, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into a couple other takes in a few moments for another Mortal Kombat.
Yes. Well, Hans was hinting at it, so let's dive right in. This is probably the biggest discussion we're going to have on any movie, and I'm talking about Mortal Kombat, the remake, 2021. Scored a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes. So we're talking the highest movie yet out of any of these. It stars Louis Tan in the lead role, Joe Taslim, Hiroyuki Sanada, Nathan Jones, Tadanobu Asano. So it's got some pretty good Japanese actors there. All right, who wants to start this off? Hans, I think you're chomping at the bit, right?
Now, you know what? You can lead this off.
Okay. I absolutely did not like this movie at all. I really didn't. There were things in it that were okay. I thought that they did justice to Kung Lao, Scorpion, and Sub-Zero. Which is interesting because when I first saw the trailer, I didn't like what they had done with Scorpion and Sub-Zero, but watching the movie, I kind of turned around on that. But the rest of it, you can throw in a dumpster. We're talking about a movie that didn't have a tournament, which Mortal Kombat is about a tournament. We're talking about paragraphs of dialogue, all exposition, where every character's got to explain everything and oh, this is this and this is this and that. And it's like, dude, come on. Like, you don't need to throw everything right at my face every time you speak. We're talking about a very bland and uninteresting lead character. Josh Lawson as Kano. Everybody's like, oh, he carried the movie. For me, he was just trying to play edgy, cool guy, and his jokes fell flat for me. Sorry, they did. I could go on and on. Oh, you know what? Another good thing I will say was the gore for the movie. I thought that was pretty good for a Mortal Kombat thing. But it was so disappointing. And I mean, you got a great character like Goro who has won the 9 previous tournaments, and he just gets beat by Golden Under Armour shirt dude randomly. Goro, I think the CGI Goro did not look as good as the animatronic Goro from the first movie, which was 26 years prior. I mean, how does that happen? The CGI 26 years later doesn't look as good as the OG. It just, man, let me take a breath and woosah. Hair, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think I lean a little bit more towards your views of the movie, Greg.
You didn't hear mine yet.
Well, I definitely don't lean towards your views. So I did really enjoy the Kano stuff. I think they referenced every movie in the Warner Brothers collection, or at least he did with his character. But I did really enjoy that. I did see this movie in IMAX. So I went to a theater to see that. So that was another added cool element to be able to do that. I really enjoyed the beginning with the feudal Japan and just kind of starting it off with that. I really wish I could have watched, an hour 45 of that kind of story, as opposed to the Mortal Kombat. The tournament, like you said, Greg, I mean, as far as adaptations to, what its brand is, I didn't really mind it as much as you did, but I understand where it's like all they do is keep talking about this tournament, and then it's like, oh, this is happening. Like, I guess this is the tournament.
But it wasn't. That wasn't the tournament.
Yeah, I know. And it kind of sets up, more Mortal Kombat movies in the future. Will I see them? Probably. I saw this with our buddy Tim. He's always going to take me to see these. I think he leans more towards the hand ratty side here than our side, Greg. But yeah, totally 2.5 on my letterbox for it. Half star because of Kano. But otherwise, yeah. And 2 stars for the opening because I thought that was pretty cool. And the Sub-Zero Scorpion stuff was pretty dope as well.
Hands,
Chris, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Hey, okay.
Go ahead.
So, all right, I'm going to be honest. I think back in when they released
Academy Awards,
when they released the trailer and everything for it, I honestly thought originally it was going to be a TV series. And I think this type of movie, like how they treated Mortal Kombat, like this way around, it would have been much better as a TV series. I think they fit a lot into one movie. Now, Louis Tan, I hope you're not listening. If you're listening, just don't take this personal. I think he was the weakest part of the movie, and I agree. Like, I think his character, like, I always have a problem when they take original characters and put them into already existing franchises. And I think this is definitely one of the an examples where it is a weak part of the movie. And his Arcana it's plot armor. Like, literally it's plot armor. Like, I don't know. I thought it was metal, but then in other scenes it looks like it's like kind of like loose, like cloth. I don't care. It wasn't good. I will be the first to admit that. But I did go in with this movie based on like other like just video game movies in general, like some of the ones we've talked about, with like very low expectations. And I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, because like the acting wasn't going to be perfect. I like Louis Tan. He's a great martial artist. He's not a good actor. And the same with like Sonya. I wasn't like impressed with her. Like, I thought she was a little too like Bridget. What's her last name from the first one? Jesus.
Oh,
Veronica Vaughn.
We'll get back to it. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Wilson. Is it Wilson? I think
Nelson. I think
Nelson. I think she was a lot better as Sonya. Like, this Sonya was a little too much for me. I don't like how they did justice to Reptile. Like, he was literally a reptile. Like, he wasn't a ninja. But yeah. I think there were more pros in it. Like, if I'm looking for like a gory kind of action fighting movie, I thought this was pretty well. Like, I love Joe Taslim. Like, I think he's a fantastic martial artist, and he was definitely the best part of the movie. And even Scorpion's character, even though like as small of a role he was in it, and the lack of the tournament, like, I'm not gonna kind of be upset about it. Like, I would have loved if it was actually in there, like the original one. But at the same time, it's like, we knew beforehand that there was going to be like like Taslim even said he signed on to do like 3 or 4 more sequels. So I think they're going to touch on that tournament aspect, hopefully in the sequel. And in the sequel, we're going to get Johnny Cage, who a lot of names are getting thrown around for that. I think that they're going to touch on the actual like tournament style in the next one. I would hope, but I mean, I liked it. If I had to give it like out of 10, I'd probably definitely say like a 7 out of 10. Like I was like kind of cheesing from ear to ear in a lot of it. I loved Kano. Cabal, I hate it because I didn't even know he talked like that. Like he could talk, and like it was just I thought he was too much. And like and when him and Kano were talking, it was just like like my head was gonna explode because I'm like, they're both kind of like jerk, like pardon, like a-hole characters. And it's just like their their banner back and forth. Like I didn't like that. I thought like you could like this is the kind of movie where you can only have like a one kind of a character like that. And I thought Cabal like really didn't belong. He just felt like a New York cop kind of guy. And he was just like, I think Harry, we talked about that over the weekend, where he just like had like a New York cop kind of thing, and he like wasn't like mysterious. He was just like a guy in a suit for the most part. It was just weird. Like I didn't like it. But other than that, I at the end of the day, I was happy. I know there's gonna be more, which is good. Hopefully hopefully they bring like some of the characters like Sub-Zero back, and I don't know how they're gonna bring Scorpion back. I hope they do. I hope Louis Tan hopefully isn't in it. But
yeah, I mean, look, I get that it's not going to be an Oscar level movie. I get it,
Right.
But like, I expect a decent story. I expect a decent plot and dialogue. Like, and I didn't get any of that with this. Like, you've got 76 characters across all of the Mortal Kombat games that have been made, 76 different people you can play as. And they made a new character because none of those 76 were good enough. No, false. Liu Kang.
I agree. Like I would love it if they had I don't know if they didn't want to do it because Liu Kang was like the central figure of the 90s movies and they want to kind of like veer away from that. But like I would have loved it if they had like maybe do it from like a Raiden standpoint or something like like Raiden and even like Cao Lang or Jesus, like
Kung Lao.
Kun Lao. I always mess his name up. Like Kun Lao, like him and Liu Kang were great together. Like I think that would have been a good focus point. And I don't think Cole fit in it. Like, but again, like all these movies and properties, they always do this, where it's always they introduce like some rando character to like somehow fulfill a prophecy. Now, I read that like a lot of people thought he was going to be the new Scorpion. I hope that doesn't end up being the case. I hope they keep Sonata because he's a fantastic martial artist. And he would he fit that kind of role good. But I don't know. I liked it. I'll defend it like till the day I die. I had 7 out of 10. I understand people's complaints about it, but it's not for
I didn't know
everyone.
you were a ride or die gang for MK like that.
No, I'm not even like a huge fan. Like same with like Harry, like with the games. Like I'm not a big Mortal Kombat guy. Like I'll play it, and then once I like play online and I start getting like destroyed by people who are much more advanced than me, that's when I kind of like, it's like why I don't play Call of Duty anymore. And it's just like, I like kind of just, it's no fun for me anymore. But, I'll revisit some of the older games.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not like diehard Mortal Kombat
Right.
where I've probably only played like 6 or 7 out of the like
There's
15
tons.
approximately games.
Yeah.
But I know enough about the story and what I like about the story to want to see that represented.
Yeah.
And that's not what I got. Like I didn't get that representation. It's like, if you look at the way Marvel Comics do movies, Marvel Studios, I mean, they will take the core essence and they will change stuff, but they keep the core essence of the characters there. And that's what makes it so popular. This doesn't do that. It's just like, I don't know. It just didn't work for me. But enough about...
I promise you, the sequel's going to fill everything in and make you feel so much better.
Yeah, but guess what? The mark of a good movie isn't what the sequel will do. It's the movie getting that right in the first place. Like, I read like a Collider article where they were talking about that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we didn't include the tournament because we wanted to put it in the sequel." And it's like, you haven't had a movie for this IP in 26 years. And so the first thing you're going to do is say, let's hold stuff back. And when it does well, then we'll put the rest in. No, that's not how you operate. That's asinine. Like, come on. It's just, it doesn't make sense. Make it make sense for me.
Man.
Somebody, please.
Greg got fired up.
Yeah, I know. MK does that. But we're still going to stay in the MK realm, even though we're moving on from this movie to Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which was released in 1997. This was the sequel to the original Mortal Kombat movie, came out 2 years later. Got a 2% on Rotten Tomatoes. Stars Robin Shaw again, Talissa Soto again. James Remar replaces Christopher Lambert as Raiden. And then some of the other characters like Sonya and Johnny Cage, they replaced as well. So 2%, ew. Yeah. Now, as much as I love Mortal Kombat, the original one from '95, this one deserves every bit of that 2%. It was cool seeing a lot of the new characters that they introduced, specifically characters from like Mortal Kombat 3, making it into the movie. But on the other hand, it was just very, very like shoddily done and cheesy. James Remar was a talented actor, RIP, but he was not a replacement for Christopher Lambert. I don't know. It was very disappointing. Hans, what do you think about this one?
I actually watched the opening like 10 minutes, like I guess Monday.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, like I forgot that they recast it. Like I think when I saw the movie, like for like Remar and probably Lambert were probably the same guy to me, like as a like a 11 or 12-year-old. But then like when I started watching this, I was like, oh my god, like that's not even Christopher Lambert. Like it's not this, like they recasted half the movie. And Robin Chow, like I don't know why he went, like I don't know. They gave him a little more money or something. I don't know. I think they kill off Johnny Cage in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like I just, this is like, I guess one of those, like they're bouncing off of, kind of like with Tomb Raider, where they probably greenlit this right away. They're like, people want to see this, and then let's just like at this point, let's throw it to the wall and see what sticks. And none of it landed. Like, it was all just, this deserves a 0 in my opinion. Like it's a horrible movie altogether.
Wow. Harry, you didn't see this, right?
No, I didn't see this one. This one I must have missed in my growing years after seeing the original. As a kid, it's really hard to, well, at least back in the 90s, it was really hard if you missed it on the big screen. It was like, all right, well, now you're waiting on VHS, or you're going to your Blockbuster to pick it up, and then you like tell your parents about it, and they're like, nah, it's not that video game where like people get their heads cut off and everything, and then they're like, yeah, I don't think that's for you. So but yeah, glad I guess I didn't see the bad one, the super bad one. So
yeah.
Hey, way to go, Harry.
You missed out on the bad one, so kudos to you. Moving on, we have Need for Speed from 2014, scored a 23% on Rotten Tomatoes, starred Aaron Paul and Dominic Cooper. I didn't see the movie. I've played some of the Need for Speed games, specifically the Underground series, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
And was probably inspired by Fast and the Furious. Harry, you saw the movie. What do you think? Did this kind of run in that same vein, or was it a different type of thing?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the Underground series, Greg. I just pulled out Underground 2 from my PlayStation 2 the other day, so I will be popping that in just to drive down memory lane. But yeah, I mean, I think the early, very, very early games, I remember there was like Burnout and like, Hot Pursuit, and like those I remember playing a lot of, but there wasn't really a lot of character development. So this, I was kind of hoping, because I did have high hopes for this movie, to be honest with you. And I really was excited to see it. And it looked like it had some, cool, car chases and stuff like that, kind of in the Fast and Furious world, but in a different world. Yeah, it didn't deliver. I don't think it deserves 20%. I'm thinking maybe 30, 40% for it. So I think it does deserve to be higher. But going back to like the early games really didn't have a storyline. So this one kind of created one, hey, here's a street racer who was, betrayed by his, former business partner. But yeah, and I mean, it had Aaron Paul coming off of Breaking Bad, right. That was kind of like his first, like, hey, he's going to be a movie star.
Is he just basically replaying like maybe a less drug-addled Jesse Pinkman, or is it something different?
I think I don't know if anybody saw him in this. It's really, I was gonna say Westworld, but I feel like he does Jesse Pinkman impression, but less drug addict. But I think it's really hard. Like, I mean, for certain characters to get out of certain roles, and he was rewarded so much for that role, and I think people look at him as just Jesse Pinkman for the rest of his life. But yeah, this one I definitely think was a little bit better, just because there were some cool, car scenes if you're into that. But I mean, Dakota Johnson was also in this movie, Michael Keaton, Remy Malek, and it's like, part of the problem with that movie is that it's not a very good script. There's a lot of problems with it, with character development stuff. I think it was almost about 2.5 hours. I remember it being fairly long. Where I think an hour 45 would have done. So that's my rant on Need for Speed. Fun games. The movie pretty much skippable, but if it's ever on, check it out.
Hands, any thoughts on Need for Speed before we move on?
I think
you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. No, I mean, I didn't see the movie. The cast seemed fine, but I had no desire to see it. I liked it when it was, called Fast and Furious. Like that's pretty much, like you said, whether Need for Speed got its like kind of idea from Fast and Furious, but the games are cool. I've played them, but not kind of involved in the series at all.
Okay. Yeah. Moving on, we have Pokemon Detective Pikachu, released in 2019. 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, and this is in fact the highest scoring movie on this entire list of video game adaptations. So it's got that going for it. Starring Ryan Reynolds as Detective Pikachu. You got Justice Smith, Bill Nye, Ken Watanabe. So you got a pretty good cast here.
Yeah.
I can't believe I was the only one to see this. Before I get into my stuff, any thoughts on Pokemon or Detective Pikachu specifically?
I love Pokemon. I probably almost caused separation when Pokemon Go came out because I was unhealthily obsessed with it. But no, like growing up, I love the Pokemon games. Like I remember being pretty like amped for this because I'm a Ryan Reynolds fan. Like I don't think there's a bad.
Big Ryan Reynolds
he does bad movies, but he doesn't necessarily like he's good. I don't know. He's kind of hard to read, but at the same time, it's like I think this was like during like I was kind of doing a lot of stuff in the house, and Catherine was pregnant, so it was like it kind of came and went. By the time it was out of the theaters, I think I forgot it even like kind of came. I remember it came out in like February, and it just came and went, and that was it. And I never I know it's been added to like streaming, so I think it's on HBO. But I just I think at the time there were like a lot of movies that I didn't see, like Captain Marvel, that I like always intended to go back and watch. And you can just add Pokemon to the list here. I mean, it looked funny. I was intrigued, but I think at that time, that few months, I didn't really want to kind of take any time to go see it.
So. Hair.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one and Sonic are probably the two on the list that I'm most disappointed that I haven't seen. So these two for me are definitely, I mean, I loved, the first Game Boy edition of Blue and Red, playing Pokemon, and then playing Pokemon Snap on the N64, was a lot of fun as well, as silly as that game was. But yeah, definitely would love to see it. Planning on putting it on my list, on my short list to see. But yeah, just haven't seen it. But yeah, Pokemon, a lot of fun. Had the cards, all that fun stuff.
Well, I am a huge Pokemon fan. Watched a ton of the anime, have played almost all of the games in the main series and a couple in the side series. Was big into Pokemon Go when that came out, and man, this movie was so good. It really was. Like, it deserves the 67%, and it is understandably the highest rated. It had a lot of heart and soul in it. The performance from Ryan Reynolds was really good. It was really cool to see Pokemon, and even though the Pokemon were CGI, it was really cool to see them in a live action environment and what that world would look like, kind of meshed with the real world. Just really a fun time. So if you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. Like, go out of your way to see this for sure. Okay, moving on, we have Postal from 2007, scored a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. I vaguely remember the game, but I never played it.
Yeah.
And it stars Zach Ward and Dave Foley, the movie. Dave
Oh.
Foley, you might know from some stuff, but yeah, I mean, not much to say about this. You guys have any thoughts before we move on?
The only thing I know is that it's another U-Bowl classic. But I don't remember the game. I don't really remember what involved the game. But I remember, if I remember this correctly, if it's something else I'm thinking of, was very controversial when it came out because for being like extremely violent.
Yeah.
And that's all I really remember. I think I don't even know like Dave Foley. Like I know who he is. Like I've seen some things in him. I don't even know like where to begin to kind of explain this to anyone, like what it could be. I mean, 9% is probably a lot higher than it should have gotten. Again, like most of U-Bowl movies, like, but sure.
Flush down in the toilet it goes.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, released in 2010, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Gemma Arterton. Scored a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it doesn't look like any of us have seen it. Any of you guys play any of the games?
I think I did. That's yeah. I think I played the first Prince of Persia, or one of the first few. I know
the OG like side scroller.
No, the first like 3D one.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. I think it's Sands of Time. I don't know. I know they're remaking one of them, so I'd be excited to kind of revisit that. But other than that, I mean, I think I remember seeing the trailer. I just remember in the trailer Jake Gyllenhaal's like jumping across buildings and like falling through sand at one point. So that's it. So
as one does if you're a prince.
Right, exactly. But I think that's it. That's all I know about the movie. The game, I if it's Sands of Time that I played, then I liked it. But not enough to like really kind of be able to tell you the first thing about the story.
Okay. Harry, any thoughts on POP?
Yeah, I mean, I think this really changed Gyllenhaal's career because of how much of a bomb it was and how much he hated it. But yeah, this was another one. I think it was supposed to be a May release. I don't know if you have that in front of you, Greg, but I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be like a big blockbuster, like kind of before the summer came out in 2010. But I remember the game vividly because you could rewind time and you could stop yourself if you were going to fall. You could just rewind it back and try to make that jump. So I remember it being an interesting kind of game for people to play. But I never got around to it. I think I was probably playing God of War around that time as like something of like, hey, I kind of have a game that's like, mythological, I guess, or I don't know. But yeah, this one just, I never played. If they ever remade it, like Chris was saying, I'd be down for it. But yeah, the movie, this was the one I was surprised none of us saw. I was expecting at least one of us to see. I think it's probably one of the bigger ones on here that we haven't seen.
You were right, by the way. It was May 28th, 2010.
Yeah,
so
it
like
was that Memorial Day
Day-ish.
weekend. Yeah, I remember it was supposed to be huge. And it wasn't.
Okay. Yeah, bomb. Next up, we have Rampage 2018. It was released. Got a fairly big cast with Dwayne Johnson, Malin Ackerman, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Joe Manganiello. So you got some names in there. 51% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, I mean, makes sense.
Go
ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, kind of right there. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so I didn't mean to cut you off, Greg, but it was a video game that I loved because I remember playing it on the N64. And I think it's the kind of thing that could be successful for video games where you kind of take something that's in a world like Rampage, but kind of put, a deeper story into it, because there definitely wasn't much of a story with Rampage, the games. You were just basically destroying cities and fighting each other.
I mean, as a fan of kaiju and Godzilla versus Kong and all of that stuff, I mean, this is what I want to see. Like, give me big monsters smashing the crap out of each other. As far as the movie goes, it was a little cheesy, but 51% I think is a fair score across the board. Hans, any thoughts on Rampage?
Same with Harry. I played the games. I remember liking them. I would love it if they actually released it on like the current consoles for like a remake of them. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Mhm.
But this is like the pre Kong versus Godzilla. Like it's giant monsters fighting each other. I didn't see it, but I think it's one of those movies where you can like kind of figure out in the trailer like what exactly is gonna happen. Like like if I remember right, like what's his George? Is it Zez,
Yeah.
the monkey's
Mhm.
name? And what's the
And
lizard's
Lizzie.
name? Lizzie. They end
Mhm.
up teaming up to fight another threat. If am I making that up or is that kind of what happens?
That I don't
Sure.
recall.
Okay, yeah. I made it seem like and I think that's what happened. Like there's another like third threat like of a monster that comes, but I it just I think I skipped it because The Rock was kind of making these movies that I was like not really interested in anymore, where it's just like general like cheesy action. And I'm not saying I won't watch them if they're like on TV or something, but at that time I didn't feel like I wanted to like kind of spend money watching it. But I that being said, like if it was on like HBO or something or like FX, I'll probably keep it on. But yeah,
Okay.
not too much about it. Games are good.
Yeah, for sure. Check those out if you haven't. Resident Evil 2002 is our next one, starring Mia Jovovich and Michelle Rodriguez. 36% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll kick this one off. I did not like this movie. This was another one where it diverted. Like I love Resident Evil. I've played most of the games. I'm not huge on the lore, but like I'm big enough on it, especially with this being the first Resident Evil movie, that I wanted to see the first game made into a movie. And they did not do that. They took elements of it, but they switched the main character for some reason, and created a totally new one. And I mean, they had the mansion, but it wasn't really the way the mansion was in the comics, or I mean, the games. So it didn't do it for me. I don't know. Hans, how about you?
I think I like it a lot more than you now. In terms of Resident Evil game, the movie starts off in the mansion for 5 minutes, and then it goes right into the lair or I forget what the name of it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like it's cool that they added the zombies into it, but it didn't feel like a Resident Evil game.
Mm-hmm.
This was another example like Mortal Kombat where they added a new character to an already existing franchise. I think half everyone in this movie is pretty much a new character.
Mm-hmm.
When you have like Resident Evil, like with the Redfields, like Ada Wong, like those are all like great, like Leon Kennedy, they're all great actors to like kind of utilize. You can change it up a little bit, but keep the mansion. But I think putting it into the underground layer was like, or that like underground station was kind of dumb. I think I remember liking it at the time, and I when I watch it now, like I'll probably like I'm like, all right, it has some really cool moments, but for the most part, it is all and I'm just gonna go on the record and say like all of these Resident Evil movies just kind of blend together for me. I don't
Mm-hmm.
other than like I think it's like Afterlife or something. I don't know what happens in any of them. Like that, I know like there's a bunch of stuff like, but they all feel like the same movie to me. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is the only one that felt different from the following like six or however many there were. But I think if they would have went with the already existing characters, I would have been like way more invested.
Okay. Harry, any thoughts on Ari?
Yeah, I mean, this is a video game series that's a hole in my discography. I've never played a Resident Evil game. The movies,
Really?
I've never played one. I think I was really scared of playing horror games because there's another film series we'll talk about after this that I just never played either.
Mm.
So I think I was just probably a little baby about it and just never played them. But yeah, I mean, I have nothing to say about this movie, but similar to Chris, it's like if you could, I even put down maybe for one of them because I think as the movies continued to come out, our buddy Tim probably drugged me to go see it on like a Wednesday when it's like, we've seen all these other movies. What's there to say? And it's like, it's opening night of Resident Evil Retribution in IMAX. Let's go check it out. We'll hit up the Applebee's beforehand. So, yeah, I've only seen the later movies of the series and, yeah, I couldn't tell you a single thing. They really blend together for it. So,
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We'll talk about the next one solo, and then I'll just kind of lump all the others together. All right.
sounds great.
Okay. So the next one is Resident Evil Apocalypse, which came out 2 years later, 2004. It got a 19%, so big drop on Rotten Tomatoes. This one, well, let's do starring first. Starting Mia Jovovich again. Sienna Guillory comes in as Jill Valentine. And then you had Mike Epps and Ian Glenn, a couple others. So this one I actually prefer over the first one because it introduced Jill Valentine and it had Nemesis in there. This was much closer to the games, even though it still veered off quite a bit. At least they had characters that I recognized and that looked good and were living and breathing for me.
That's important.
So, yeah, so I kind of enjoyed this one a little more. Couldn't tell you a ton about the plot other than just I remember liking it. Hans, how about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with my previous point. Like I think I remember like same thing where I probably like this a little more to see like Jill Valentine and like you say with Nemesis. Now, did they introduce Claire in this one? Was Allie Larder in this one, or did she
No.
come in the third one? Okay,
I think that was the third one.
their third or fourth one or 12th, I don't know. But
Right.
but I do remember like uh, I don't remember anything specifically about it, but I remember coming off of Resident Evil 1, like going to see it, that I did see it. But um yeah, I think it's cool they started to kind of maybe bring in a little bit of lore from the previous movies, even though they did veer off. But other than that, I think this is the point I probably liked it, but it really got to the point where it's just like I really couldn't like if there was like a Resident Evil Quizzo on all 6 of these movies, I had to guess what
Jeez.
scene, what's in which one. It'd be a quick night for me.
God bless.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, we have Resident Evil Extinction, which comes out 3 years later in 2007. That got a 24% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that was the last one that I saw. I checked out after that. Resident Evil Afterlife comes out 3 years later in 2010. That got a 22%. And then we have Resident Evil Retribution in 2012, so another 2 years later.
6 total.
Yeah, and that got a 28%. So second highest rated amongst them until Resident Evil: The Final Chapter in 2017. So a 5-year gap there, and that got a 37%, which was the highest amongst the entire series. It blows my mind that there were like you said, 6 movies made. I have to assume that these movies were made on the cheap and then they were just blowing out their grosses, like they were making way more than the budget cost, because I cannot for the life of me understand how they would have made this many movies in this franchise. What are your thoughts on the franchise overall, guys?
Like I said, they blend together. The only one I remember is in Afterlife is when they introduced Wesker. And there's like a fight between Claire, but like Chris Redfield's in it, who's like the star of the friggin' series. It took him 4 movies to get like added into it. It was Wentworth Miller who he's all right. Like I don't hate him, but I think it was Wentworth Miller.
I had no idea they even put Wesker or Chris in the games.
Yeah,
or the movies. I mean,
they go to like some prison and like Allie Larder's Claire Redfield, and then they like find Redfield in like prison, and he's like basically like a prisoner, or like he's in like an abandoned prison as like, and then that's it. And then Wesker comes. I don't know if he was introduced in any of the earlier games, but he's kind of prominent at the end of this one. But there's a really cool fight that between the Redfields and Wesker, and it's very like I'm trying to think what Resident Evil it was, which one it was like of the games, but it's very reminiscent of that ending, like the fight of how it goes down. That was pretty cool. I don't know about anything else. It's it all. I didn't see Final Chapter. I probably will at some point in my life, just to see how the story wraps up. But I'm pretty sure. I mean, they're already making another Resident Evil movie that's coming out soon, or this year or next. I'm not sure, but I don't know if it's a movie or a series. But they're kind of want to redo that world, and if they do it, I hope it's more towards like the feel of the games. This eventually at one point left horror and went into a just generic post-apocalyptic like world with creatures, like with zombies. That was it.
Yeah. Our thoughts on the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, just kind of Chris was alluding to a little bit there towards the end of what he was saying was, I remember it being something completely different from the games or how the games were described to me. The games have always been described to me as slower pace. You're, as you guys have mentioned, in the mansion, and then these movies just kind of took it up a level and were like, yeah, we're going to go for, but successfully. But the reason why I think they are successful is because they usually came after that kind of huge Christmas rush of everybody, seeing movies. And then come January, middle of January, when no one's, when everyone's looking for something new to see, it's like, what do we got? It's just, I described earlier with Tim. It's like, what do we got? And it's like Resident Evil and IMAX opening night. And it's like, all right, let's go see it. Sure. It's a Thursday. But I mean, this series carried on for 15 years. So I know there's a new Resident Evil game coming out, Village, which will be out soon. So it's something I'm excited to dive into and try to, touch on some of the classic games. So more to report back on that on our next video game movie podcast.
Good. You should definitely check out like Resident Evil, like remastered 1 and 2, and then the last one, which was just, I think, Resident Evil. But those are really
Biohazard
good.
one.
Yeah, Biohazard.
Yeah.
Okay, so man, we just got out of one survival horror franchise, and now we're jumping into another with Silent Hill, which released in 2006. Got a score of 32%, and the cast had Radha Mitchell, Sean Bean, Laurie Holden from Walking Dead, Deborah Unger, Alice Krieg. So some B-level names, with the exception of Sean Bean, but I really, really, really love this movie. Like this is one that's just absolutely spooky. This is one of the few PG-13 horror movies that like will give me the chills. I thought it was really well done. It captured the feel of the games. Story was good. I think the ending falls apart a little bit. It becomes a little confusing. But overall, I thought the performances and the dialogue, the plot, all of it was really well done. Very, very spooky ambiance for sure. Hans, you saw this as well?
Yeah, and I don't remember too much about it. Like I've only seen it once, and Silent Hill's like as a game, I don't think I've ever finished it because this is like a I'm sorry. This is like a series where it's like it's this kind of creepy horror I don't like. Like Resident Evil, like jump scares aren't too like bad for me, but there's a lot of creepy stuff in Resident Evil that just kind of like gives me like chills every time I like, and that's the job of the game. Like it's supposed to like kind of creep you out. And I remember liking the movie. I just never revisited it. Like I don't remember how it ends. Like I probably thought it was probably a little too confusing too. But Sean Bean's great in it. I mean, there's not really a performance where he's bad in. I don't know if he kind of met his normal fate in it. Probably. I just assume he did.
Yeah. He I don't think he actually does in this one. Well, it's confusing. It's confusing. I'll say that.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, I think I played through like maybe like the first 3 hours of the first game. And then when things like started getting like really, really, really weird, I'm like, I'm out. Like I'm not, this is stuff that's going to give me nightmares.
So. Hare, any thoughts?
This game series definitely, again, scary, silent, I mean, it's in the title. Games were definitely not my groove, but I do remember this movie being a bit of like, oh, Silent Hill, like that looks really creepy. I think it probably made some money, because I do remember this coming over to a side where horror fans were definitely excited for it, even if they weren't excited for the game, even if they had no idea it was based off a video game. So yeah, I remember this one being more memorable than the next one. But yeah, I had no real desire to check it out. This was probably 2006. I definitely wasn't in a horror movie phase then, or probably a little scared of it, to be honest. A little scared.
I mean, I watch it maybe like once every other year. But yeah, I would say if you get a chance, give it a shot for sure.
Okay.
As you mentioned, we had a sequel to it 6 years later in 2012, Silent Hill Revelation. That only scored a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, so kind of got a pretty big drop. Interesting cast in that they bring back some of the people from the first one, so I guess it's a direct sequel. Sean Bean, Rhoda Mitchell, Deborah Unger, but they also add in Malcolm McDowell and Carrie Ann Moss and Kit Harington from Game of Thrones. That kind of blew my mind to see that. Now, like I said, I haven't seen the sequel, but I'm gonna go out of my way to check it out now, 10% or not. Any thoughts on the sequel, guys?
I'll go back and watch Silent Hill, and then like with that cast too, like I'll probably watch Revelation. Like it sounds like I actually just looked at like some of the cast in it, and I'm like, it's not bad. Like
Yeah.
I would definitely check it out. But yeah, and I didn't realize that. Like I think that like there was one of the first, like, I guess not first, but they kind of utilized like 3D. I remember specifically that movie. They were kind of like called it Silent Hill 3D, and then like Revelation was kind of like a second title to it. But
Yeah.
I didn't realize it's like I always thought like Resident Evil was like 15, 20 years ago for the most part. And it was fairly recent. Like, I mean, 2012, it's not 2 years ago, but it's,
Almost
you know,
10
they were
years ago.
still, oh yeah, it almost is. Yeah. But they were still like that. That's kind of more recent than I remember it coming out. So, yeah.
Okay. Next up, we have Sonic the Hedgehog, released in 2020. This is the second highest rated amongst all of the video game movies, behind Detective Pikachu, with a 63%. And somehow, again, I'm the only one that has seen this. So I guess I'm just I'm the guy you go to if you want to watch good video game movies. As far as the cast goes, we had Ben Schwartz doing the voice of Sonic, and then James Marsden and Jim Carrey in the main roles. Movie was a lot of fun, and this was one I didn't see it was when it was in theaters, because that was like right as the pandemic was starting, and I just, I didn't really have a desire either. But then when it came to Amazon Prime, I was like, you know what? I heard good things. I'll check it out. And it definitely surpassed my expectations. Like, it was a fun movie, a lot of comedy in it, but just really enjoyable. And they set it up so that there's going to be a sequel, which I believe they already announced. Good on whatever company it was. I don't recall the distributor, but good on them for changing the look of Sonic amid fan outcry, because he looked really weird and nothing like the character. And then they took that to heart after fans were really backlashing against it. And I mean,
really did.
It worked. They spent X millions of dollars to do it, and it actually paid off at the box office. So good for them. Did you guys want to see Sonic at all? Any desire?
I did, and I will. I'm a sucker for like a goofy Jim Carrey performance, and I think this is like kind of right up my alley with that. I liked how they listened to kind of the like the fan outcry, because I think one of the first things that I did notice, like when they first like showed the look of him, I'm like, this is he's terrifying looking. Like, he doesn't look like Sonic. and I agree. I think it's good that they did change it, and I'm looking forward to watching it. I'm a big fan of the Sonic series, so it's definitely like, I've played most of the bigger name ones. Like the some of the spin-offs I didn't play, but for the most part, like 1 through 3, I think Sonic and Knuckles, like, I'm a huge fan of. So I would expect in the next couple months I'll probably go back and watch it.
Okay, fair shout. Harry, any interest?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, I think Mario and Super Mario Brothers is kind of their first introduction to video games. So Sonic the Hedgehog was mine. I had it for Sega Genesis, and I had Sonic, I think 3, and then I got the expansion pack where you could put the cartridge on top of your Sonic and Knuckles cartridge to have Knuckles in the game there for it. So it holds a place in my heart. It's just like you were saying, Greg. I think once the pandemic started, I dove into probably more film, like Criterion Channel and older movies that I hadn't seen, and it just kind of gets lost down the list for it. But definitely one I wanted to check out. I was super excited about it. I think I get ragged on from our friend Dom about it, about not having seen it since it came out. But yeah, looking forward to watching it. Glad you're here to represent us for it, Greg.
Power to Sonic. Okay, so next up we have a classic that you just kind of mentioned, which is Super Mario Brothers. Came out in 1993, was the very first video game movie adaptation live action. And it got a 24% on Rotten Tomatoes. Had a decent cast. I mean, it had Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper, Samantha Mathis. So you got some names in there. Look, it's a really cheesy movie, not a good movie. I enjoy it, but I'm ashamed with myself for enjoying it. This is definitely like a guilty pleasure movie. And look, I don't watch it all the time. It's probably been like a decade since I've watched it, but I will watch it on occasion, maybe once a decade. So I don't know. It's just they try to adapt a lot of the stuff from the games, but they do it in such a weird, wonky way. It's like it's unrecognizable. I don't know that this property, and I know there was a TV show, you know, the Super Mario Brothers Super Hour. I don't know that this property can be adapted into live action. It's just the aesthetic of the Mario series doesn't really fit that. So I don't know. Hans, what do you got?
I first like to say that Super Mario TV show is a classic, and I love it with Lou Albano. It's
Albano.
Albano. It's so bad. It's so. But I had a VHS that I owned with Super Mario Brothers. Like with one episode where it was like basically they ripped off King Arthur, and he needed to find a golden plunger. And I watched that cassette. I wish I could exaggerate, over 200 times, like in maybe like I used to watch it like every day, and that's
Wow.
yeah, that's that. Now let's go to the movie, the live action movie. It's awful. There's I like it's not Super Mario Brothers. It's not. They could have called it Plumber Brothers or something like there's not or anything like anything else, but like I agree the cast is, I guess if I was gonna cast a Super Mario Brothers, like Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, like at the time they were big names, and I guess I could see that. But like
no mustache on Leguizamo though. No Luigi mustache.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. He doesn't have it. Oh wow.
But Hoskins fits the look for sure.
He does. But excuse me, I'm trying not to laugh here. Dennis Hopper as King Koopa is like it's I don't know, like he's a human basically. He's like an evolved human, and it just makes no like it's so trippy. Like that's the kind of thing that like they were just coming off of the success of Super Mario Brothers for like the maybe 10 years, and they're like, well, let's cash it out. They include Yoshi, which Yoshi's the craziest looking dinosaur. It's
like a live action dinosaur, like animatronic.
Yeah, it's scary. It's terrifying. Yeah. But there's nothing else. Like in order for like Bob Hoskins to jump high, he has to wear special shoes, and he's like that. And I remember that part. But it just I feel like I remember a lot of it because it was so cheesy. But like it just like if I were to watch it now, I'm like, this is not like if I ever shut at the fin, I'm like, first of all, here's Super Mario Brothers, and then here's something else that they called Super Mario Brothers. It's not the same thing. And then like it just got weird. Like she was supposed to be a princess, and I think her name was Peach. They didn't call her Peach. I forget her name.
Yeah, but Daisy maybe.
Yeah. And I'm like, just made no sense. And I know why they made it. I just don't know why they made it the way they did.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, it was Daisy. Just looked it up. Yeah. It's really, really weird. There's no other way to describe it. I guess the Bomb was cool, which was like a little version of the Bomb from the game. But I think that's it. Like you said, they had the jumping shoes and like I don't know, just the Goombas were like really bizarre.
I didn't even know Koopa could talk. King Koopa could talk, or Bowser, whoever he was going by the name. And the last person, like, at least try and do some kind of CGI. Like, I understand they're talking about the humans evolving into dinosaurs, but I would not imagine Dennis Hopper to be King Koopa. Like, that's not, like, in my mind, a live action will not be Dennis Hopper with, like, the horns and everything on him. It's just, it's so weird.
So, don't, maybe skip that one unless you're in for a really psychedelic experience. Okay, moving on. 1994, we have Street Fighter coming in at 13%. Cast, you had Raul Julia, Ming-Na Wen, and of course Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think that was Raul Julia's last movie. Anybody back me up on that?
Yes, if
That
it
sounds
wasn't, it
about
was his
right.
first like big movie. Like unless he did like a smaller one since then. But I think this is his last one.
Okay.
Yeah, he
This
died in '94, so yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
probably
okay, so
last
probably
one.
his last role there. Just bad movie for me. uh this is another one kind of like Super Mario. I'll watch it maybe once every 10-15 years just to remind myself how bad it is, but I did not enjoy this. Ryu is my favorite character in Street Fighter. I know he's, kind of vanilla for pro Street Fighter players. They're like, oh, he's basic, you're just a Ryu player. But I like the character. But he was just a schmuck in this. They didn't really do anything to make him cool. Van Damme as Guile was cool, although again, you have like a Frenchman playing an American, and he's got full accent on. He's not even trying to hide it. They included some of the characters from Super Street Fighter 2, which was cool, which was a newer release game at that time. Raul Julia was not imposing as M. Bison, God rest his soul, but he does not have the body type for that. Really bizarre how they made like him have powers, and like how they made Blanca. It was a bizarre adaptation. I think they were trying to do right, but just failed. What do you guys think about Street Fighter?
It's my guilty pleasure if I had to pick one off this list.
Mhm.
It's I now I'm on the page of like there's bad movies that have really good moments like monologues or something in it. And I think like yeah, like Raul Julia is not like he's not physically fit to be in this type of movie, like in like kind of an action movie. But I think like some of the lines that he delivers are so good. Like I think his performance of as M Bison is good, but
Mhm.
he can't like stand toe to toe with Van Damme in an action movie.
Right.
Um, but that being said, like I like it has some of my favorite movie lines in it where like he's talking to Chung Li and the whole thing where she's like, you don't even remember, or like she's like the worst day of your life was when your parents died. For me, it was just Tuesday. Like I
Right.
think that's like
Classic line.
I think there's so many good lines in that script, but it's not a good movie like
Mhm.
at all. Like it deserves the low rating, but I feel like I just love it a little more because it's like extra cheese, like kind of like how you feel about Super Mario Brothers. Like this is my Super Mario Brothers, where I just feel like it's so it has nothing to do really with the games for the most part. Is like I wasn't a big Street Fighter guy, but I remember Blanca being in like a some kind of cryogenic machine for a while, and then breaks out and he's monstrous looking. That's all I really like. And but for the most part, I can't remember a lot of the movie. Like, but I Raul Julia is it's one of my favorite roles for him.
Mhm.
So, Tyler, what do you think?
Uh, Hair.
Hey, listen, I love this movie. I can't. I love how bad it is. As Chris mentioned a little bit, I never really played the games, as I mentioned with Mortal Kombat. I'm not much of a fighting type game. Have I seen this movie in the last 15 years of my life? Probably not. So I will continue to carry on my love of this movie. I just think it has, like Greg, you were saying, and as Chris mentioned about your Mario Brothers love. I think
Mhm.
that's it for me with Street Fighter. Is it's just I love the military aspect of it, of just there's these two different sides, like they have to stop them before whatever. I don't even remember the plot exactly, but just a lot of cool fight scenes when the characters like drift, like there's that big like kind of action sequence at the end where each character gets to fight like their kind of arch rival in a way towards the end there for it. But yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. I want to revisit it again, but I also don't want to lose the nostalgia of watching it when I was probably 8 years old. When it was on basic cable, or 9 years old, of just really enjoying it. So
Right. Okay. Well, as much as you guys might like that one, the next one not so hot. We had Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li from 2009. And that got a 5% on Rotten Tomatoes. That starred Kristen Crook from Smallville, Chris Klein, Neil McDonough, Robin Shaw from Mortal Kombat is in the movie as Jen, and Taboo from Black Eyed Peas.
Wow.
And you also had Michael Clark Duncan. So interesting, because the cast seems to be, well, interesting. I'll give it that. But the movie was just very, very bad. They tried to flesh out things a little more, and again focus on the Chun-Li aspect, with Charlie as the other main character. But it was not good. And I remember one of the things that like really threw me off too was they showed Chun-Li at like three different stages in her life, like when she's a kid and a young, like a preteen, and then her adult self, I guess. And like none of them looked anything like each other. And it just like it really like threw me off. Chris Klein, I mean, what can I say? Outside of American Pie, he doesn't have much of a career to write home about, and even that is questionable. It's just it was a bad movie, so you guys were not missing anything with that. Do not go out of your way to see that movie.
Yeah, I know. Like they were, I think that the plan with that was too. They were gonna like focus on like individual characters, like kind of build like a I guess a Street Fighter verse.
Mm-hmm.
And like they started with Chun-Li, and that was it. I think they realized how much that bombed, and I remember like where I was working exactly when that movie came out at like the midnight release or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
and I think like 3 people went to see it, and that was it. Like I don't really I walked in on a couple clips and I was like, nope, I don't care about anything like this. I'll never watch this movie. So
Just that bad.
thank you for justifying that.
No problem. I will say though, if you guys are looking for a Street Fighter fix in the live action realm, check out Street Fighter Assassin's Fist. Now, granted, it didn't make the list because it's not a movie, but it was a YouTube series, and it focused on Ryu and Ken, and it had Akuma as well. It was so good. Oh my god, like so good. This was everything that Street Fighter should have been on the big screen. So again, Street Fighter Assassin's Fist, check that out if you can. Real quick, Hands, any thoughts on that?
I remember watching it and being like kind of like I thought it was really well done, but I mean I can't kind of praise it. I just I would recommend it, but other than that, I think I maybe only watched them like maybe once or twice, but
okay,
yeah, it's cool.
Next up we have Tekken from 2010. So I actually forgot that they had made a live action version of Tekken.
Me too.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's. I saw that on the list. I'm like, that happened.
It did. It is notorious in that it is the lowest scored of all of our movies with a 0%. Yes, even beating out Alone in the Dark's 1%. It has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not much of a cast to talk about in terms of like recognizable names, with one exception, and that is Shang Tsung from the original Mortal Kombat. Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa plays Heihachi Mishima, the main bad guy. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I have not seen this. Clearly, it sounds like something that is no bueno. Any thoughts on Tekken?
Like the games. That's it. Like this is basically this is the Paddington of bad movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
It's not the Citizen Kane anymore. It's the Paddington.
Yeah, got it.
Exactly.
Okay. Moving on, we have Tomb Raider from 2018. So that's the reboot, and that had a 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. Starring Alicia Vikander and Dominic West. Harry, looks like you were the only one out of us that had seen that. Any thoughts on it?
Love me some Tomb Raider. Yeah, I mean, I think Alicia Vikander's Lara Croft is more geared towards the newer games that have come out. And the movie kind of is as well. She kind of uses a bow a lot more than the pistols she used to have in the earlier games. But I kind of like her Lara Croft a little bit more. I think she adds a little bit more depth to the character with it. The 52% is probably about right. You can flip a coin on whether you like it or not. I don't think it's a perfect Lara Croft adaptation, but as long as they keep making the games, they'll probably keep making the movies for it, to be honest with it.
I haven't seen it. Should I go out of my way to check it out?
I wouldn't say go out of your way to check it out, to be honest. I think it's a little forgettable. But it's a solid action movie, kind of if you're looking for that. But or adventure movie, it does a little bit more justice for the adventure part of it. But I wouldn't say it's something you stop what you're doing to go see at all. But the Lara Croft adaptation, the best one, still eludes us to this day.
Okay, fair enough. Hans, any thoughts on Tomb Raider reboot?
No, I'll watch it. It's got I like Alicia Vikander, and Walter Goggins is in it too, so he's always
Yeah.
throws in a good performance. So I think it just kind of disappeared from my radar a little bit. But I remember seeing the trailer. I was pretty amped for it. It looked like it really kind of matched up with the new series, series of games, which is cool. Like Lara Croft in like her very early days. So yeah, I'd be all in to check it out. I just haven't yet. So
Okay. Next up, we have Warcraft from 2016. This scored a 28%, which was a little surprising to me. I thought it was better than that. Looks like I was the only one that's seen it. As far as names in the cast, you got Ben Foster, Dominic Cooper, Toby Kebbell, and Clancy Brown. Yeah, I mean, it was enjoyable. I didn't play any of the original Warcraft games, but I did play World of Warcraft pretty extensively through several expansions. Hans, you played with me for a little bit. I would say go out of your way to check it out. It was a fun, sorry, Har. It was a fun movie. It was a fun fantasy movie. You got to see some decent CGI in it, decent creatures and costumes and makeup. Yeah, I don't know. I disagree with the 28%. I think it should be higher. You guys have any thoughts on Warcraft?
like I said, like me and you played for a little bit. I wanted to check the game out, but I don't think I was way too interested at the time. Like I thought the trailer looked pretty good, but I think at this time there was like a lot of stink of other video game movies where I'm like, it's probably gonna be like a generic one where just it's not gonna be too good. But I heard like after it kind of saw its time in theaters, I kind of heard some like okay things about it, and what you're saying about it, it's not great. It's not gonna win awards, but it's not a bad movie. So I would definitely like to go back and check it out. And I mean, I haven't played the game in God knows how long. Like I don't even know if it's still live.
It is.
But I would definitely, I would check that. Actually, I think it was on TV like Sunday night. But it was like towards the end of it. So
I want to say I caught it on Netflix like a couple years ago. I'm pretty sure it's not on there now, but I'm sure it's got to be streaming somewhere. So.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last we have Wing Commander from 1999, starring Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard, and it scored a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. Never played the game, no desire to see the movie. What about you guys?
Played the game, won't see the movie. That's my extent of this. I don't even remember too much about the game. I know it was like an older game, but I think it was like kind of like excuse me, like a flight simulator type, like airplane. Other than that, this isn't something I'd go out of my way to ever watch. So
the poster, or maybe it's the cover to the DVD, that's what it looks like. It looks super cheese. Like it looks like early 90s made for sci-fi TV movie. Like it looks bad. Harry, you trying to see Wing Commander or what?
Listen, I don't think I will. I don't think I'm going out of my way to see it. I do, when you mentioned the actors in it, I do remember, I think, hearing about it, but definitely it was something that I just had zero interest in for sure. So pass.
Like Freddie Prinze Jr. has a weird career where like I don't think he's a terrible actor. Like in some of the roles he fits, like kind of like I Know You Did Last Summer, and he's great in Star Wars Rebels. But it's just like he would like he has really good movies. It doesn't. It still counts. If they'll bring him if they ever do. Well, I don't know if they will. He's such a weird but I feel like in the early like whenever this came out, like he would definitely be like that perfect like actor that would like do a movie like this, like and is I don't know. It's just weird. I know, but Greg, I didn't look at the cover, but I
Mhm.
still know exactly what you're talking about. Like from seeing that.
Just sticks out.
Yeah.
Well, that's our list. We had a total of 40 movies, excluding the animated Final Fantasy. And of those 40, the average score, which excluded Final Fantasy as well as Dead Trigger and Far Cry, since those didn't have any scores, period, the average score was 25%. Video game adaptations, come on, get with it. Let's start making some that are good, I should say. I mean, we just went through 41 movies because it was the 40 plus Final Fantasy, and
Yeah.
there's definitely some diamonds in the very very rough. But it's sad that you have so many game movies and they're mostly just trash.
It's weird, like the whole aspect of like video game, because a lot of these are popular series,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't. You look at it and say like, you see some comic book movies like, I'll use like Green Lantern for example. Like people are like, how are you gonna mess that up? Like it's a very popular, like somewhat popular franchise. It make the games make ton of money. I remember Resident Evil 2 like broke like so many records when it came out. But then you like, I think when like studios try and like veer away from an original to tell an original story, I think that's just hurting the actual like proper like the product.
Yeah.
And we see like examples like Resident Evil we talked about. I think that's a perfect example. Even Mortal Kombat for the most part. But it's like I just think that they like studios try and think they know what we want. But if you look and like just in the history of what we like, this would be like a great thing to like really dive into, like some of like the production of some of these movies to see like really what they like, why they didn't like, why Super Mario made like a completely random like movie that has nothing to do with the games.
Yeah. What was
Which
the thought process behind that?
exactly.
So what do we think about the future of video game movies?
Howard, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, I know like one movie that I'm really excited for, or intrigued by, is the Uncharted movie with Tom Holland. The reason I'm excited for that is because I love the series, and I think it's an interesting take on jumping into that world, but not making it exactly like the games. However, I mean, I think comic books has kind of overtaken any desire to make video game movies. I mean, I think as long as the success of Marvel and I mean DC to a smaller extent, but they're still very successful. I think as long as they continue to pop, I don't think there's going to be room for those Class A actors to jump into a video game movie. I mean, as I mentioned with Uncharted, I think Tom Holland has a chance to do something different with that. But I think video games or movies are still continuing to have issues of not top-notch, top-tier directors, not top-tier writing, not top-tier acting. And they kind of fail because of that. So, I mean, I think the Sonic series could be something. And I think if you gear it more towards children, I think that could be something that could be successful as a future video game movies, kind of continuing with Pikachu and Sonic to kind of, hey, let's release, a children movie for it. But I think the Max Paynes or the Mortal Kombats of the world will fit a very niche audience, but never really be too successful.
Mm-hmm. It's yeah, you definitely make a good point about like comic book movies kind of usurping or supplanting the video game movie, because that was like the space before where it was like, oh, this is your summer action movie that's going to get all the nerds out. But now with comic book movies, for the most part, the quality and the budgets are there, the track records are there, you have studios that are invested in it. So it's like, yeah, are we just going to keep making stuff from a genre, i.e. video game movies, that has a terrible track record that seemingly is difficult to adapt, or do we want to go with the new thing, which is comic book movies? So that's a pretty good point you had. As far as the future of video game movies, yeah, I mean, it's not looking super bright for me. We'll see with Uncharted, but I think the casting is all wrong in that movie.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
It could be fun, and I'll go in with an open mind. But I don't know. We'll see. Chris, you had mentioned the Resident Evil movie coming up. we'll see about that also. I'm kind of excited to see what they do with it because I did not like the last series,
The last
but
6 Resident Evil movies.
yeah, and it's in. By the way, it's in post production. Expected release date is November 24th this year. It's called Resident
Okay.
Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, no
Easily be
major.
next year as well.
Yeah, and no major names in it. So what does that tell you? You know, maybe they're not expecting it to do much either.
Right.
I don't know. Hans, what do you think about the future of video game movies?
You got a really good point with the with the comic book movies, and I think that enough. Like, I don't think video games are, and I mean, like, I don't mean this like in a negative point. Like, I feel like video games aren't as popular today as they were, like, in terms of pop culture, in terms of they were like in the '90s. Like, and I'm not saying that they're not selling,
Mm-hmm.
but like, there's a lot of series that are out there, like a Call of Duty and everything. Like, they're like some of the most popular games. Like, I don't think they'll ever make in the movies. Like, they'll never make a Call of Duty movie, or I'm trying to think of other ones like Fortnite. Like, well, actually, like, I can see them making movies like with that, but I don't. I think like you had. I think once video games like it's hard to say like they peaked. I think the content, like, I think you had, like, you missed an opportunity for like Zelda. I think
Hmm.
I feel like you can get, like, back then it was easier to make video game movies and consider them to be like successful during the '90s. I think now, like, I don't think a lot of people want to see a Call of Duty movie. I don't think a lot of people are going to be begging to see a Fortnite movie. Harry, I saw that. Like, I saw that head shake. I think the popular games now wouldn't translate well into movies. So I kind of agree where I don't see it being like I don't see them having a good chance to like kind of succeed. Um, but again, not saying video games are one of the most popular forms of like entertainment, but I
Mm-hmm.
just think like the content now, I think they like it would kind of go like full circle where they'll try and make things that aren't kind of with the game. Like, they're not going to learn from their past mistakes.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I'm
okay.
also not excited for Uncharted. I think it's like kind of like I think it's gonna come and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tommy H. So what is one video game that you guys would like to see turned into a movie?
I mean, I think for me, I mean, I think Chris, I would actually be excited. I don't understand why we don't have a Call of Duty movie every other year that drops like with Mark Wahlberg and just tells a story and just,
Stop that.
I mean, these generic war movies that come out, like just make it Call of Duty, add 1 or 2 characters from the lore for it, and just make it, I mean, the problem with making a Call of Duty movie is literally when you play the game, it's like an 8-hour campaign that's like all action all the time, and there's barely any story anyway. So for me, I wouldn't say I would like to see that done. I just don't understand why we're not popping them out just like that. A movie that I would like to see, though, I hope it wouldn't be bad, would be Horizon Zero Dawn. I kind of hinted at it earlier. I think that could be really cool to scale and with the CGI for it. The other thing I was going to say about that I forgot to say with Chris is I think the best way for movies to succeed or for video games to succeed is to actually go with series. Like when we talk about like things I'm excited to see, like the Last of Us series, I'm like super down for. I love that game. I would say I would love to see that turned into a movie, but they're going to make a series of it. And I think that's way to have an 8-hour story as opposed to putting out a movie, as we talked about issues before, where it's like, hey, let's do 2 hours, but we won't get to the big thing and we'll leave it as a hint for the next movie. It's like, no, shoot your shot now. You know what I mean? So having 8 hours to tell a story, I think, is a lot more valuable for the video game experience because for the most part, we play video games. It's not like we're playing for 2 hours and it's like, oh, look, we're done. We get into these worlds, we dive in, and I think that's super important. So I guess I would probably say Horizon Zero Dawn would be I think could be a really, really cool movie. Sadly, I think it might be better if they just animate it and, make it a movie, instead. So
To your point about the series, one that was recent that comes to mind is The Witcher. I've never played the
yeah.
games or watched the series, but apparently it was very popular, the series that is, and well done, so much so that they've already made a season 2, which I think is in post. So good point there. Hans, what is one video game you'd like to see turned into a movie?
So I was kind of back and forth with this. Like if I had to pick one, like I've always wanted to see a Legend of Zelda movie. I think at this point we're never going to get it. But with that being said, I think BioShock. I don't know if you guys have ever played those games. I think that they're very original from their storytelling standpoint. The third game is BioShock Infinite is probably my top 3 favorite games of all time.
Nice.
And I would kill to see that turned into a movie. I think the way the world of that they built in those games, I don't think it'll ever happen unless it's all CGI. I don't think they can they can make like a darker environment, but I just think that to do it right, it won't end up being a live action one. But that's one I would love to see actually then pull it off. But yeah.
Cool. So I'm gonna have to choose my all-time favorite game series, which is Kingdom Hearts. I would like to see live action, but with the Disney characters as CG, a la like Tom and Jerry, I know Tom and Jerry was hand drawn, and Space Jam was hand drawn, but along the same lines, mixing that live action with CG. Give me like a Scott Pilgrim type aesthetic, anime aesthetic with it.
Yeah.
And I think that they could go all in on that. They'd have to make some changes to the plot to make it digestible because that is the most confusing plot of any video game I've ever played.
It really is. Yeah.
But it doesn't stop me from loving it or wanting to see it. So there's that. What movie would you guys like to see turned into a video game? Hans, how about you?
All right. You kind of answered for me. I don't know if I would go with that. Like, are you saying like The Raid? I would love it if The Raid was turned into a video game. It'd have to be like mainly just like a hand-to-hand combat, because that's like, if you've never seen the Raid movies, like just, the podcast is almost over, so just bear with us a little bit longer and turn them on right away. But if I didn't go with The Raid, I would love to have, and we've had them in the past, like a kind of like today's next gen RoboCop game. I would love to see like a current, not the Joel Kinnaman one, but I would love to see like just an old school, or like the old school RoboCop on the newer, like an open world kind of deal, like Grand Theft Auto. But yeah, that or like any kind of those like 90s action movies, like a Commando. Commando would be great on a video game.
Nice. Harry, how about you?
Well, I think one that I was thinking about, because I didn't really love this movie, but I know it was popular. I think Shutter Island would be a really kind of cool, interesting game that they could do with that. And then I thought I had it written down, but I don't. I forget what my second one was, but we'll go to you, Greg, and we'll see if I remember it before we end.
All right. So mine is actually a movie that Hans mentioned during our discussion. I want to see a Highlander game.
All right.
I think that
I changed my answer. It's Highlander.
I think that would be pretty awesome. You could make it just a one-player action adventure game if you wanted to, but the thing I'm thinking of is more along the lines of like a massive multiplayer game where you're just tracking other people down and kind of dueling them one-on-one. I think there should be permadeath. So, once your character's head goes off, that's it. Your powers, the quickening happens and your powers go into the other guy. But I think that'd be a really cool concept for a game. So I don't know. Work it.
Nice.
You remember
that Highlander action?
No, I don't. I was going to also mention, I think District 9, which I thought would be kind of an interesting, if they did something in the lore of that. But yeah, I don't remember what my other one was, so maybe we'll have to tweet it out or something and see if I remember it.
Was it what I said earlier with There Will Be Blood, where you just collect as much oil as you can?
No, that wouldn't be a great game. I would say it's a fantastic movie though.
Have a little side quest with a bowling alley.
Cool. I don't think that'll work.
All right, so we are at the end of the episode. Have a few things to catch up on here real quick, or a few things I wanted to throw out. First of all is Mystery Science Theater 3000, one of my favorite shows of all time, is currently running a Kickstarter. It is over at midnight on the day this episode drops. So you have one day. If you've never seen Mystery Science Theater 3000, check it out. It's funny. If you love movies, you're listening to this podcast or watching us, I'm sure you'll love Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's people just riffing and joking around with old cheesy movies. So if you're a movie fan, guarantee you'll love it. Anyway, they're running a Kickstarter to get another season going. And that is at makemoremst3k.com. So check that out. Secondly, Harry here was kind enough to make a Twitter account for Papa Spice and Papa Spice's Hot Takes. And where can the folks find that at, Harry?
They can find us at PS Live Spicy. So that's where they can let us know what we need to do better, what we need to do worse on, and interact with our people. So that'll be great.
Awesome. So give us a follow. We'll follow you back. And I appreciate Harry for making that happen. And last but not least, for my end anyway, I am going to be guesting on one of my friends' podcasts, which is Crap Kids Watch. It's a show by a couple of parents who are friends of mine, and they review various episodes of various TV series that kids watch. Some of it's good crap, some of it's bad crap, but it is all out there. I am not going to spoil what I'm going to be doing, but that episode should be dropping the same day that this drops. So give us a listen, then give them a listen. They're on Spotify and iTunes. Again, that's Crap Kids Watch. All right, so that's it for me. Harry, you have anything for the peeps?
No, appreciate everyone sticking in through some pretty mediocre to poor content. Not from us, but about movies. So if you made it this far, congratulations.
God bless. Hans, how about you? Anything for the peeps?
I got nothing right now, but I'm gonna go check out some new PS5 games that are dropping this week. So checking out Returnal. So
nice.
That'll probably be my new movie to video game, but it's pretty much like Edge of Tomorrow. So people will just trash it, call it a remake.
Good stuff. And while you're following Papa Spice's Hot Takes, make sure you give Hans a follow also at PhilaTTP. That is Trust the Process on Twitter.
Guys, I hit 100 followers. But
hey!
I think one of my spam accounts that followed me dropped me. So I'm at like 99 now.
So we got to get them back up to 100 at minimum.
Man.
If you want mediocre tweets and dad jokes, follow me.
That's the place to go. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for hanging in with us for our ultimate video game adaptation review. We appreciate it. As always, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another topic for you guys. But until then, make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, follow, leave us a review, all that good stuff. And make sure, as always, that you live spicy.
Spicy.